What if the most dangerous minds aren't loud, aggressive, or chaotic, but calm, controlled, and emotionally silent? What if the people who seem unfazed by pressure, guilt, or fear aren't stronger by nature, but wired differently? Today, we're stepping into one of the most misunderstood and fascinating areas of psychology. The psychopathic mind, not the movie version, not the criminal stereotype, but the real psychological traits, thinking patterns, and emotional mechanisms that define psychopathic personalities, and what understanding them can teach you about power, protection, and self-mastery. This video is not about admiration, and it's not about fear. It's about awareness, because when you understand how certain minds operate, you become harder to manipulate, harder to control, and stronger in your own psychology. Welcome to Soul Shift Psychology. What psychopathic really means in psychology. The word psychopath is often misused. Psychologically, psychopathy is not defined by violence. It's defined by a specific emotional and cognitive profile. Psychopathic traits include low emotional reactivity, reduced fear response, shallow emotional depth, high cognitive control, strategic thinking, limited empathy. Many people with psychopathic traits never commit crimes. Some function in everyday society, in business, leadership, negotiation, and competitive environments. Psychopathy exists on a spectrum. This means traits can appear in varying degrees, not as a single identity. Understanding this spectrum is critical, because psychopathy isn't about chaos. It's about emotional detachment combined with mental clarity. The core difference: emotional processing. The most defining feature of psychopathic minds is how they process emotion. Where most people feel emotions intensely, psychopathic individuals experience emotions muted or delayed. Fear, guilt, anxiety, and emotional pain register at a much lower level. This is not strength. It's neurological difference. Brain imaging studies show reduced activity in areas related to fear and emotional empathy. As a result, stress affects them less. Pressure doesn't overwhelm them. Emotional manipulation works differently, but there is a cost. Limited emotional depth also means difficulty forming deep emotional bonds, shallow connection, reduced emotional meaning. This is why understanding psychopathy is not about copying it, but learning how emotional regulation works at its extremes. Why psychopathic minds appear confident. Psychopathic individuals often appear calm and confident, not because they believe in themselves deeply, but because fear doesn't interrupt their thinking. Most people hesitate because fear speaks loudly. What if I fail? What if I look stupid? What if I'm rejected? In psychopathic minds, those emotional alarms are quieter. This creates decisiveness, risk tolerance, apparent boldness, but confidence without empathy can turn into recklessness. The lesson here is not to remove fear, but to lower its volume. Confidence comes not from eliminating fear, but from acting despite it. The psychology of low fear response. Fear is a powerful regulator of behavior. It keeps people cautious, cooperative, and socially aligned. Psychopathic individuals have a reduced fear response, which changes how they interact with the world. They take risks more easily, remain calm in dangerous situations, feel less anticipatory anxiety. This can look like courage, but it can also look like disregard. For everyday life, the takeaway is this: fear is useful, but unchecked fear paralyzes growth. Mental strength comes from training fear, not obeying it. Emotional detachment versus emotional control. Here's an important distinction. Psychopathy involves emotional detachment. Healthy psychology involves emotional control. Detachment means emotions are muted or absent. Control means emotions are felt, but managed. You don't want to be detached. You want to be regulated. The danger of emotional detachment is losing meaning, connection, and fulfillment. The power of emotional control is clarity without numbness. This is where self-improvement psychology lives. Why psychopathic minds are hard to manipulate. Psychopathic individuals are difficult to manipulate emotionally. Why? Because emotional hooks don't work well. Guilt, fear, shame, and social pressure are the primary tools of manipulation. When those emotions don't register strongly, manipulation loses its power. This is why understanding emotional awareness is so important for you. The more aware you become of your emotional triggers, the less control others have over you. Emotional awareness creates psychological immunity. The role of empathy and its absence. Empathy allows humans to feel what others feel. Psychopathic minds lack emotional empathy, but may still possess cognitive empathy. Cognitive empathy is understanding emotions without feeling them. This allows strategic social behavior, persuasion, charm, without attachment. This is why some psychopathic personalities can be charismatic, but empathy without feeling can become manipulation. The lesson is not to remove empathy, but to balance empathy with boundaries. Empathy without boundaries leads to exploitation. Boundaries without empathy lead to isolation. The psychology of charm and surface confidence. Many psychopathic individuals develop charm, not because they care deeply, but because they observe human behavior carefully. Charm becomes a tool. They study what people want to hear, what makes others feel seen, how to gain trust quickly. This is cognitive intelligence applied socially. For healthy individuals, the takeaway is this: social awareness is powerful, but it must be guided by ethics. Charm without integrity is manipulation. Presence with integrity is leadership. Why psychopathic minds don't dwell on the past. One advantage psychopathic individuals have is reduced rumination. They don't replay emotional experiences deeply. They don't feel lingering guilt or regret. This allows them to move on quickly, stay focused on objectives, avoid emotional spirals, but reflection is important for growth. The lesson here is not emotional avoidance, but letting go of unnecessary rumination. Learn from the past, then release it. Stress, pressure, and the calm response under pressure. Psychopathic minds often remain calm. Adrenaline doesn't overwhelm. This gives them an advantage in high-pressure situations, but chronic lack of emotional stress can also reduce motivation and connection. Healthy psychology trains stress tolerance, not stress absence. You grow stronger by gradually exposing yourself to challenge, not by avoiding emotion entirely. Morality and internal limits. Psychopathy is associated with reduced guilt. Guilt is a moral emotion. It regulates social behavior. Without guilt, behavior relies on external rules, not internal values. This is where psychopathy becomes dangerous. For healthy minds, values act as internal anchors. They guide behavior even when no one is watching. Mental strength without values becomes destructive. Why people are fascinated by psychopathic minds. Psychopathic traits fascinate us because they represent what we struggle with: fearlessness, emotional control, confidence, detachment. But fascination doesn't mean imitation. The goal is not to become emotionally numb. The goal is to become emotionally skilled. Protecting yourself from manipulative personalities. Understanding psychopathy helps you protect yourself. Warning signs include superficial charm, inconsistent stories, lack of accountability, emotional coldness. Strategic flattery. Protection comes from strong boundaries, slower trust, observing actions over words, emotional self-awareness. Knowledge removes vulnerability. Healthy traits you can develop safely. You don't need psychopathy to be strong. You can develop emotional regulation, calm under pressure, strategic thinking, reduced reactivity, confidence through competence. These are trainable skills. Mental power doesn't require emotional absence. It requires emotional mastery. The role of self-awareness is the opposite of psychopathy. It allows you to feel deeply, reflect honestly, adjust behavior, grow ethically. Self-awareness strengthens empathy without losing control. This is the foundation of psychological maturity. Emotional discipline. Without emotional loss, discipline teaches you when to act, when to pause, when to speak, when to stay silent. You don't need to silence emotions. You need to listen without obeying. That's real control. Why understanding dark traits makes you stronger. Studying dark psychology doesn't make you dark. It makes you informed. Informed minds set better boundaries, choose better relationships, avoid manipulation, act with clarity. Awareness is protection. How to build calm confidence the right way? Calm confidence comes from self-trust, competence, emotional regulation, experience, not from emotional numbness. Slow your reactions. Breathe before responding. Choose intention over impulse. Calm is a skill. Daily practices for mental strength. Pause before reacting. Observe emotional triggers. Strengthen boundaries. Reduce impulsive speech. Reflect. Daily train stress tolerance. Gradually protect your values. Small practices shape strong minds. The final truth about psychopathic minds: psychopathic minds are not powerful because they lack emotion. They are powerful in limited ways because emotion doesn't overwhelm them. But true strength includes awareness, regulation, empathy, values, purpose. The strongest mind is not the coldest one. It's the one that can feel deeply and still choose wisely. This is soul shift psychology, where understanding replaces fear and awareness becomes power. If this video expanded your understanding, like it, share it, and subscribe. Because the most dangerous mind is not the emotionless one. It's the aware one that knows when to act and when to remain still.